Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 26th of September, 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So there was this thread from Kaylee.eth, who is a blockchain researcher at Stanford, and she started off the thread by saying, billions in crypto stolen. If we can't stop the thefts, can we reduce the harmful effects? Over recent months, a couple other Stanford researchers and I drew out and prototyped ERC20R/72R to support reversible transactions on Ethereum. Now, this thread got a lot of attention on crypto Twitter, caused a lot of debates and arguments to unfold over the weekend. And then I had my own take on this where I said, I'm all for people coming up with the new ideas and putting them out into the ether, but I'm not here for TradFi 2.0. Thanks, but no thanks. So I think people took this tweet the wrong way. I think my tweet the wrong way. I want to kind of break down what I meant by this and why I'm not against, obviously, user protections and reversible transactions and stuff like that. But what I am against is doing this stuff at the base layer or doing it on primitives that are very much open standards that have kind of proliferated throughout the ecosystem. So, for example, the ERC20 and ERC721 standards are already very, very popular, already have a massive network effect. So we shouldn't be reinventing the wheel there. If you want to have a, reversible reversible transaction ecosystem, or if you want to build things on top of them, then you can do that at higher layers. You could do that at the front end. You could do that with a wrapper around these tokens, right? You can even do them at the roll-up level. You can create a whole roll-up that just is a reversible transaction ecosystem, and you can have that there. But the reason why I don't think that there should be like a new token standard spun up is because then it ends up competing with the existing standard. So you can imagine a world where we had ERC20 and ERC20R. The R stands for reversible, obviously, and then they're just competing with each other for liquidity, for network effect, for use. And I don't think that ERC20R would actually go anywhere because DeFi can't actually work with reversible transactions. A simple example is, imagine if you traded in ERC20R on a Uniswap for ETH, which is not a reversible token, right? And then for some reason, whoever has the ability to reverse that token transfer enacts that ability, it'd just screw the entire trade up. Like the ETH can't get clawed back, so that ERC20R would be sending in the liquidity pool on Uniswap, so it would be directly withdrawn from the liquidity pool on Uniswap, and that would kind of get it out of balance there, and then the person who ended up with it would lose out, right? The liquidity provider that ended up with them would lose out. Now, obviously, with ERC20s, they're fungible, but if you kind of expanded this to ERC721s, which are the NFT standard, then you could say, well, what if I sold a CryptoPunk that had a reversible transaction on it, or it was kind of like wrapped in reversible token standard, and then that was reversed? Well, what if I didn't use a token that was reversible? Then in that way, someone loses, right? So there's a lot of problems. It definitely breaks all of DeFi, I would have to say. You could give like countless examples here. So I don't think that would be very workable. I don't think those standards will get any adoption. Now, obviously, we need user protection at the higher layers. We need to be able to reverse things, or need to be able to do dispute resolution and things like that. And I'm all for that. But the way you should look at the Ethereum kind of base layer and the standards around it is that they're governed by the Ethereum network. There's no dispute resolution. The Ethereum network does not have reversible transactions natively, and it shouldn't ever have reversible transactions natively on the base layer for some of the reasons I just outlined. But I want to give a bit of context here around how the traditional finance system works. So when it comes to settlement in the traditional finance system, you never really have guaranteed settlement, right? You have like optimistic settlement. So for example, if you have something that's a transaction that's being done, and you do something with a credit card or with PayPal, and you buy something online, well, the merchant has an optimistic guarantee that money is going to be theirs, is going to land in their account, and you have an optimistic guarantee that you're going to receive the item. But if there's a dispute at any point in that process, that has to go through the dispute mechanisms that's been set up, and usually that's through PayPal, but you can take it to its logical conclusion. If the dispute fails at the PayPal level, you would have to go to some government to sort out this dispute, and then you could even go all the way to a court of law to sort it out, right? And this is all based on contracts that we have, whether they're implicit or explicit contracts, they exist in the real world. We don't have any of that on Ethereum. We don't have like physical contracts where you have to go to a court to basically prove who was in the right and who was correct, or at least kind of get a judgment on who was correct. With Ethereum, you code up the smart contract, and then the smart contract is the arbiter of what's correct and what's not, as long as it's fully decentralized. For example, the Uniswap smart contracts that are fully decentralized, they don't rely on any external entities to say if a trade was settled or not. The trade gets settled based on the logic in the smart contract. And a simpler example would be if I sent ETH to someone, that's not reversible. I've sent that ETH. The only way that that transaction could be reversed is if the actual network itself reversed it. Like if someone, it wouldn't even need to be an attack. If the network agreed to do an irregular state transition and basically say, we're going to remove this ETH from the person that you sent it to and we're going to send it back to you, that could technically happen. Practically, it's not going to happen, right? Practically, and that still fits in with what I'm saying about the Ethereum network being the arbiter of that transaction. So that's why you have extremely strong settlement guarantees when you're doing that, because there's no reversibility there. There's no court that anyone can go to. I can't go somewhere and basically say, hey, you need to reverse this transaction. Like I can't go to a court and say, hey, can you order this transaction to be reversed? I mean, maybe they could, if they wanted to take it to its logical conclusion, force the person to send me the money back, but they can't force Ethereum to do it, right? They have to go to the actual person. So for example, if I was to accidentally send funds to the burn address and I was like, oh, damn, like I accidentally sent my ETH to the burn address, I want to get my ETH back from there, I can't go to a court, I can't go to a judge, I can't go anywhere, I can't go to the police, nothing like that, and say to them, hey, can you get my ETH back? No, because the only way I could get my ETH back is, as I said, I'd have to convince the entire network to do an irregular state change for me in order to withdraw that ETH from the burn contract, because the rules of the protocol are set, and they change through network upgrades, but they don't change to save someone's ETH. And we actually had an example of this with EIP 999, which was the EIP that was put forward to save the funds that were involved in the, I believe it was second parity wallet hack, where there was a bunch of ETH that got frozen due to a bug in the smart contract. I believe the library or something was deleted, and there was a EIP to reinstate that library so that the funds would unlock and people could withdraw their funds. Now, this is actually a really good example because we had on-chain proof of this. There was no subjectivity here. It was basically, we know what we had to do to rescue those funds, but we never did because it's a slippery slope from there, right? Like if you start basically invoking subjective governance every time someone loses money, well, then the Ethereum network loses its credible neutrality, loses its decentralization properties, and those things are very, very hard to get back. I mean, there are a lot of people who don't believe that Ethereum is decentralized or credibly neutral at all because of the DAO hack, right? That was actually reversed. There was, the blockchain didn't get reversed, but there was an irregular state change to take the ETH that the hacker got back and return it to their rightful owners. So we have instances and we have examples and we have precedents that we can all look at. But in the real world, it's totally different. Like Ethereum, the network governs what happens on its chain. And the simplest example is ETH transfers, because ETH transfers don't require any extra logic. It's just built into the protocol. But if you build a smart contract that is completely decentralized, then everything is based on that smart contract logic. You can, of course, build contracts that have functions inbuilt that can be changed via social governance and subjective governance. And that's all well and good, but again, like those rules are codified in that smart contract. Whereas in the real world, we have contracts, right? We have laws, we have regulations, but they're not run by code. They're run by humans. Like it's all a human social construct at the end of the day. And so are blockchains at their very, I guess, base layer, where the humans are the ones running the software, but the code has certain guarantees behind it, just like laws and regulations have certain guarantees behind them. Some laws are stronger than others. Some laws are easier to change than others, right? Some laws are harder to change than others. We've seen this time and time again over thousands and tens of thousands of years throughout human history. So I think that's the context that you need when thinking about this sorts of stuff, because Ethereum as a settlement layer settles whatever, people can follow whatever rules they want on the protocol. Sorry, whatever rules are coded into the protocol, and then whatever rules are coded into the smart contract. Now, Kaylee says here in her tweet that this would this could be used to stop thefts, like this reversible transactions. Okay, well, let's give an example here. Let's say you had a hacker drain 100 million ETH from a contract, and then there's nothing we can do about it because that was because the hacker followed the rules of the contract. They exploited the contract. Yes, those weren't that wasn't obviously the expected behavior of the contract, but that was still allowed by the contract. He wasn't doing anything that wasn't allowed. He wasn't allowed to do. So he did it. Obviously, we want the hacker to we want to take those funds away from the hacker. We want to return them to their rightful owners. But it's the same thing as the parity wallet kind of hack there, right? Or the parity wallet bug. I shouldn't call it a hack. It was actually a bug. The same thing exists there. You're invoking subjective governance when the social layer should always be the last line of defense here. So if you start invoking it for $100 million theft, then okay, well, you have to invoke it for the next theft and the next one and the next one. Okay, so that's obviously unworkable. What if we did the reversible transactions? Well, then you have to weigh up whether it's worth the trade-off of a DeFi breaking, or if you want DeFi to work, you actually have to build in all these new mechanisms that make it just look like TradFi. Like if you want this stuff, then just use TradFi. Like you don't need to reinvent the wheel within crypto. In saying that, as I said, I still obviously think that for DeFi, for crypto to scale to mass adoption, we need user protections. We need ways to do dispute resolution and things like that, but they should happen at the higher layers, in my view. I don't think it should happen at the base layer. The base layer should be kept as neutral as possible. The existing standards that we have, especially really popular standards like ERC20 and ERC721, should not be competed with. Like, there's no point. I mean, yeah, there are other token standards that potentially could be better, not have reversibility, but could be better for other reasons. But the problem is that competing is just really, really hard. So you're going to waste all this time competing rather than just doing it at higher layers and just wrapping the existing tokens in these things. But I still pretty strongly believe that if you want to do reversible transactions, it's really, really hard. You would basically have to create your whole entire own ecosystem for that. So for example, you could create an entire rollup that had a reversibility ecosystem, but you'd have to build it in such a way that DeFi would work inside that ecosystem context, and you wouldn't really be able to bridge it with the main chain in any kind of a way that would be efficient or speedy, because you'd have to basically say, well, okay, we have optimistic guarantees that this is that these transactions are final because we are waiting for a dispute to happen. So let's say you bake into every token transfer that there is a week countdown, and then after the week has passed, no one can do a dispute anymore. It's locked. That transaction's finalized. Okay, well, that's fine. It reminds us of how rollups work, right? Well, you have optimistic confirmations when you do the transaction, and then within a couple of minutes, that transaction batch gets put on the Ethereum main chain, and then you have a kind of a guarantee around that. You have a finalization guarantee around that. So those sorts of things, well, maybe we'll see them built, maybe we won't. I'm not saying that people should or shouldn't build them, but I do strongly believe it should be done at the higher layers. So hopefully that gives some context there around all of that, and you can understand that from at least my point of view here. There was a bit of a heated debate in the Daily Gwei Discord channel about this as well, but we're going to have to see how it plays out. I honestly don't think that it's going to work very well if you start doing these sorts of things at the base layer. I don't think it's going to work at all, to be honest. And I think it's going to be a hard thing to compete with the existing standards, the existing liquidity. I mean, think about how much liquidity revolves around the existing standards. It's immense, right? So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, I'm going to leave that one at that. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. If you want to jump in the Discord, you can talk to me in there, or in the YouTube comments. I'll give them a read if you leave one. All right, so speaking of things that need to be built in Ethereum, Tim Baiko was quote tweeting himself here, and he said, "For Ethereum, I think we had private ETH transfers by default. I think if we had private ETH transfers by default, we'd be in a great spot. Contracts can all be public, and making 21,000 gas sends private would be good enough." And then Tim Baiko says, "This is the number one problem on Ethereum I'd love to see someone come up with a solution to. Many issues to work through, even beyond the privacy itself, but if we got it done, it could be completely change what the end state of this space looks like." So I've spoken about privacy a lot on the Refuel, especially when it comes to doing it at layer 2 or doing it through mixers like Tornado Cash. And I've also spoken before about doing it natively on the base layer and the trade-offs that come with that. But I think what Tim's saying here is that if we could come up with a way to do it just for ETH transfers, like imagine a world where everything's still public on Ethereum except ETH transfers. Could that be enough, right? Like obviously doing all of the base Ethereum chain fully private would take a long time for us to get there. As I said, there's a bunch of trade-offs and complications with that. But could we just do ETH transfers? Because ETH is already the token that powers the Ethereum network. It's already a thing that everyone routes through. Everyone has it. Everyone has to use it if they're using the Ethereum main chain, obviously to pay for fees. So if we could make all ETH transfers by default private, then we could have a much more robust privacy ecosystem on layer 1 Ethereum than we do today. I don't know how long it would take for us to get there. I don't know what kind of priorities the developers would put behind something like this over the other things that still need to get built within Ethereum. But I still do think that privacy is up there with scaling in terms of importance. Now, I think the debate is, should we do it at layer 1 or should we just do it at layer 2 and leave layer 1 as it is? We may have to just deal with layer 1 being super public and completely public, actually, for years to come. And maybe one day we get those private transactions for not just ETH, but everything. But I still think it's worth talking about it and thinking about it. But I expect to see it happen on layer 2 rather than layer 1. All right, so speaking of upgrades coming to Ethereum, so Trent Van Epps here put out a thread on EIP 4844 and the KZG ceremony. So he says, for the past 6 months, contributors have been building the KZG ceremony, a prerequisite for proto-danksharding / EIP 4844. Hopefully in 2 weeks, we'll be collecting a community contribution from the main stage audience at DevCon. So this ceremony basically is required to get us to proto-danksharding or EIP 4844. It has come under scrutiny because it is what is called a quote-unquote trusted setup. But within this setup, you only need one honest participant. So you could essentially have, 100 participants total. And if 99% of those participants weren't honest and only one was honest, it would still be secure. The thing would still work. It would still be all good. So I think that obviously we want to have like a really large set. We don't want just 100 people. As Trent says here, the ceremony will be browser-based, accessible, no large files to download, only take 2 minutes to complete. They aim to have the largest set ever of 5,000 plus contributors, provide an easy way to audit the transcript, output summary of all contributors, which proves the ceremony is legit. So I'm pretty sure anyone's going to be able to get involved with this. And as Trent says here, if you're at DevCon on the main stage audience, you'll probably be involved with it as well. I remember I was involved with it for Tornado Cash when it originally got spun up. I ran it in my browser and I was kind of participated in it. And I think this is really cool because like the fact that you only need one honest participant is crazy to me. I mean, I obviously calling it a trusted setup is technically correct because you still have to trust one person or, one entity out of however many you have in the set. But like, that's crazy because the chances of every single person in a massive set of people. So let's just say the chance of every person in a 5,000 person set is dishonest is really, really small. Like, I wouldn't call it astronomically small, but it's really, really small. And obviously the issue is making sure that those contributors are legit. As Trent says here, but they've been doing a lot of work on this. And, the funny thing is a lot of the people that are going to be participating in this ceremony are going to be Ethereans anyway, and they really have no incentive to lie here. I mean, lying would go against the best interest of the Ethereum network. So that's why I think that something like this, even though it's called a trusted setup, it's technically correct, but practically you're not really trusting anyone because the chance of people of that one the chance of there being no honest participants in a massive set of contributors is quite low. But you can read this thread for more information on this. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to check out. All right, so there were about 20 validators that were slashed over the last 3 hours, being 2 days ago, due to a tester equivocation. So Terrence said here, I couldn't find much info with the validator indices and deposit addresses. My guess is duplicated setups, forgot doppelganger detection. These are some really early validators, and the way you can tell is that you can see on the left-hand side, slashed validators and the validator number. So anything in that range, like the numbers are like in the 3,000s, is really, really young. That's basically since Genesis, and I went and looked it up. These validators had been staking since Genesis. Now, 20 of them got slashed. They lost an ETH each, which means they lost about the last 20 ETH total, or just over 20 ETH total for an attestation violation. As Terrence said here, it could be due to duplicated setups. And I guess it seems this was part of the same entity because the deposits followed. You can go back and check their deposits. They followed or each other, and the numbers obviously match up as well in the validator numbers here. So yeah, I mean, these things happen. I've seen some people fighting this on Twitter, saying that people were saying that slashing is actually just punishing within the Ethereum context, and you don't need slashing. I think that's completely wrong. We spent so long researching slashing and implementing it is because it actually does work. Obviously, there are going to be some casualties along the way of people doing things they shouldn't, but really, there's not that many of them, and people learn very quickly, and the punishments kind of scale with I guess how many validators are doing the same thing at once. So you don't actually get punished that harshly, just depending on what you've done to get slashed. And I remember EthereumPools.info had a really great tweet thread about this that you should go check out. I don't remember where it is. You can probably just search it on Twitter on their profile. But yeah, I mean, these things happen. I think the fight is hilarious because I saw so many people from other communities, other blockchains being our proof of stake doesn't have slashing and it's secure. It's no, it's not. Just because it hasn't been attacked yet or nothing quote unquote bad has happened yet doesn't mean it's secure. You don't know that until something bad actually happens. And as I've said, I think I said this last week, Ethereum is not waiting around for that something bad to happen. It's planning for the worst case scenarios that we can think of in order to be able to recover from them if they do actually happen or defend against them as well. All right, so I spoke a little bit about MEV and the different builders last week. So the builder market share in the Ethereum block building space is actually becoming more diverse now. So a lot of more small builders have entered over the weekend. So we've gone from 9 builders to 17 as of September 24th. Now, this is another piece of FUD that people were bringing up on Twitter, that 2 or 3 addresses were the majority of builders on the network. Now, this is actually not it's a nuanced topic because the whole point of PBS or proposer builder separation is that we know in the long term builders just centralize because of things like MEV. So why don't we separate builders from proposers so that the builders can be as centralized as they want to be, but they're just kind of sending these bundles in the MEV context. They're sending these bundles to the proposers, and then obviously the validators are still attesting and proposing and proposing blocks and all that sorts of stuff. So the network still remains just as secure. You just have a, I guess, centralization of builders, which isn't that big of a deal isn't really a big deal at all if you have that separation there. I guess the biggest deal would be that the builder could censor you, but if you can build the blocks yourself still, and if you've got a diverse builder set, or if we make it so that we've got a diverse ecosystem of builders, it's not actually that big of a deal. And I mean, the economics come into this as well. If the builders start censoring certain transactions, people may just take their I guess validators away from those builders and say, well, I don't want to build with you because you're censoring. Just like how I originally was going to run MEV boost and not run it on the Flashbots relayer because they're censoring Tornado Cash transactions. But I'm not running MEV Boost at all. But there are plenty of people out there who are running it, but aren't talking to the censoring relayers. So that also kicks in as well. But good to see that the builder market share is becoming more diverse here, and it's definitely due to profitability because obviously being a builder is quite profitable if you can build, if you can be one that is successful. So yeah, good to see a bit of diversity here. All right, just wanted to highlight another thread from Haim over the weekend. So this is a timeline of Ethereum's life since basically late 2013 when Vitalik first published the white paper. This is pretty cool. He's got little logos here for all the different upgrades and milestones along the Ethereum journey all the way up to the merge. You can see here that Ethereum has, it's funny looking at this because you can see in 2017 and 2018, it was kind of a dead period for Ethereum in terms of things going live. So in 2017, we had in that period, we had only one network upgrade, and that was Byzantium in October of 2017. But other than that, there was nothing. And funny enough, people thought proof of stake was coming in 2018. So and that was the most dead period. And then you can see after that, starting in 2019, we really sped things up, especially because the beacon chain went live and we're doing the merge and all that sorts of stuff. So you can see in February of 2019, we had Constantinople. Then we went to, 2019 was basically a very big year for building the beacon chain and focusing on that. Then we had Mira Glacier in January 2020, which was a difficulty bomb delay. But just before that, we had Istanbul in December 2019. And then, through 2020, we had the staking deposit contract go live, beacon chain Genesis. And then in 2021 was a big year as well. We had Berlin, London, Altair, Ara Glacier, and then 2022 was also a big year with Grey Glacier, Bellatrix, and of course the merge. So it's really cool to see this, that basically that funny period there in 2017, 2018, I think 2017, obviously a lot of noise because of the bull market. 2018, I think Ethereum was trying to find itself. The bear market came along, and then we kind of, I guess, had a rough idea of what things would look like. And then 2019, we had a better idea. And now we're at where we're at today. But you can go give this tweet thread a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so just a shout out here, Jake Chavinsky highlighted that Gavin Newsom, who is, I believe, the governor of California, or governor candidate of California, basically vetoed this bill called AB 2269, which is basically the bit license copycat bill that passed in the California legislature by a wide margin, 71-0 in the assembly. And he says here that takes guts. He did it for all the right reasons. So for those of you who don't know, the bit license, I guess, like thing or license in New York is really restrictive to what can actually be done and what can be offered in terms of trading crypto. New York, obviously it happened because of Wall Street, but New York is actually a very restrictive place when it comes to trading crypto. Now, I think this bill was going to bring the same thing to California. So what ended up happening was that Gavin vetoed this, even though it got a 71-0 and it passed, in the assembly here, which is very, very positive. So some more positive regulatory news. I just wanted to highlight that for you guys. I know I'm running out of time here, but yeah, I just wanted to highlight that it's not all doom and gloom out there. It's not all bad. I know the macro environment is still all doom and gloom. I know everyone's calling for the end of the world right now, but I don't know. Like, I look at Twitter and I'm like, you know what I do? I look at Twitter, I look at all these macro people. It's always just doom, right? And they're posting all these charts and they're posting all this stuff, and then they go, subscribe to my newsletter. And I can't help but think that they're just using this doom in gloom and panic and fear to engagement farm in order to get more people to sign up to their stuff, and they're probably making money from it somehow. That's why I really hate the internet, like, sometimes, is because it's very hard to get the right information because people definitely have ulterior motives a lot of the time, especially when it comes to things like markets and the macro environment and stuff like that, because I can't see any level heads on Twitter. I can't see anyone saying, hey, this is the situation right now, but this is what it could look like in the positive context. It's always the negative context. No one's saying, oh, maybe inflation has peaked, or maybe, the Fed rates won't go as high as we all thought it will. And here are some charts that prove that. It's always the world's ending, this, that, everything's breaking, currencies, blah, 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 all this. Like, it's so hard to actually know what's true and what's just engagement farming. So that's why I've avoided the macro environment, and not the macro environment, but like the kind of, I guess, the macro talking heads, and I've avoided trying to follow what they're saying, and I've avoided really opining too much on it because it's very complicated. It's obviously spans the entire globe, and it's something that I think a lot of people in crypto don't really understand very well, but people still have to have their opinions, that's for sure. But yeah, anyway, that was a bit sidetracked there, but it's just very hard to get accurate information on all that sorts of stuff. But I'm going to power through the last set of updates here just because I'm running out of time. So there's this blog post here done by Donna, which is going through the differences and similarities between Optimism Bedrock and Arbitrum Nitro deposits. And this is just part one of this blog post series. So I highly recommend giving this one a read because it was quite interesting, and following them so that you'll see the other parts that are coming out. But yeah, I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you. Another blog post to read is one from Polynya talking about blockchain apps. Now, I've talked about this before, how I think that we're going to have, all this cheap block space, but we need apps to fill it up with, right? We need people to want to use these apps. And Polynya gives some thoughts here. So it's a short read. I'll link it in the YouTube description for you to read, but just wanted to highlight that one. And to finish us off for today, I come across this really cool app called Orb on on Twitter here, which is built with Lens protocol on Polygon. So this is a mobile app fully built with Lens. They've invited 13,000 plus waitlisted users to the private beta, and it's basically a decentralized social network from what I can see in the video here. So it's pretty cool. I mean, mobile first, decentralized social network built on Polygon using Lens protocol. This is what I like seeing in the Web3 space. As I've said before, I don't think that reinventing the wheel is the way to go. I think that just using these primitives that Lens protocol has created and building on top of it and building like an open, I guess, social graph when it comes to social media in a decentralized way is really, really cool. So you can go check this out. Maybe you signed up to the waitlist already and you've already checked it out, but I'll link that in the YouTube description below. But I think that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Or actually, maybe not. I might not have time to do one tomorrow, but we'll see. Tomorrow being Tuesday. If I don't catch you tomorrow, I'll catch you on Wednesday. Thanks, everyone.